right into it.
Yeah. Yeah, man. You've been working out long?
Yeah. So I grew up in sports. So ever since high school, I kind of had that routine. Going freshman year, they had us working out for soccer. And ever since then, there was a little lapse. Freshman year of college, obviously, for probably like a year.
You went to Michigan State.
Yeah. So went to Michigan State, loved it. 4 years there, doing a master's right now at Michigan State in urban planning. So it's, definitely bleed green and white.
Yeah.
Still,
aside from like just trying to like get a complete give me an overview of your bio. I went on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Kind of got a little bit of a background on you here. But are you from the Lansing area then, or is that why you chose Michigan State? Or
No, it was honestly really funny how I chose Michigan State. I was born and raised in Oakland County, Clarkston. It's an hour north of Detroit. I tell people I'm from Detroit, but that's like one of those suburbs where I'm not really from Detroit. Right. You're so far from Detroit. It's pretty much the first rural, semi-rural community you hit on your way out of Detroit. But born and raised there in Clarkston and went to a really small school. I graduated with 36 kids in my class.
That's like Catholic school here, dude.
Exactly, yeah. So that was the thing. It was a new Catholic school that I had went to.
Gotcha.
It had only been open for like 8 years, the high school had. So graduating from that environment, I saw my siblings go to like Hope College and Franciscan, which is another smaller Catholic college. And they have 4,000 kids, right, at Hope, I think. So I wanted the biggest environment, though.
This episode is brought to you by Brandon Ball, broker-owner of Dwelling Realty, Keller Williams, Northern Michigan. Are you looking to sell your home? Then look no further. When you list your home with Brandon Ball, you'll get a trusted advisor who will guide you through the entire selling process. With extensive knowledge of the local market, he'll help price your home competitively to attract the right buyers. And with proven marketed strategies, your home will be seen by the most qualified of buyers. With 17 years in the business, you'll have someone experienced who's on your side. Contact Brandon today to get started selling your home. 231-690-4981. That's 231-690-4981. Or Brandon at dwellingrealty.com. This episode is brought to you by Just Clean, Manistee's premier car wash located at 146 Cleveland Street or just north of the US 31 bridge. Choose their ultimate car wash, folks. That's what I always do because I can't stand my truck being dirty. And the ultimate car wash is the best. It includes a triple foam conditioner, ceramic coating plus wax, and a 60-second heated blow dry. Get in, get out, get looking fly, get the dirt and dust and grime off your vehicle. Choose Just Clean Car Wash of Manistee.
Coming out of high school, I was like, I want to just be in a community that is so large, I will probably never see the same person walking down the street twice. Right, because going to a small high school, you just had to interact with the same people, whether you liked it or not.
Sure.
Whether you liked their personality or, whether you truly got along and found them interesting. So
yeah.
I was like, let me just go to the biggest thing ever. Michigan State was it. Thought I was going to go physical therapy and ended up totally changing paths after freshman year to like social science and fell in love with that.
Boy, that's the way it goes. My wife graduated from Michigan State. She got a bachelor's degree in food science and worked for, I think, Nestle for a while after that. And turned out that wasn't the career she wanted to take. So she went back to Michigan State, got a master's degree in accounting, and she's a CPA now.
Oh, wow, that's a big transition, too. Transition. That's definitely a career switch you don't expect.
I think she got to a point where she was like, let's just get the kind of degree where I can just get a sustainable job, and it's like less than 1% of CPAs aren't employed. It's one of the most employed jobs in the country.
Okay.
Right now until AI takes over, but we'll see.
Sure, right? especially here in communities where a lot of professional services are aging out, like CPAs. I know that the replacement rate for attorneys, CPAs, any type of professional service like that, so needed in more rural communities.
You definitely get into I'll be speaking for her a little bit here, but like when she graduated from state the second time with her master's, she went to work for Deloitte, which is one of the biggest CPA firms in the country, in the world. And, kind of a meat grinder, but income was phenomenal.
Yeah.
And the difference between working in, say, Grand Rapids versus coming to Northern Michigan, it's a big gap in wages, so you kind of got to take the good with the bad with that.
Sure. And so when did you know her at the time, being in Grand Rapids? Did you end up moving? Like, when did you end up moving
She's
back?
the local girl.
Okay.
So no, I met her just kind of randomly here one night when she was still in Grand Rapids, but she was back home visiting.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and I went to high school with her brother, so I am the epitome of a local guy.
Sure.
Right? Like, there's like Kevin Bacon with me. You know, I kind of know a little bit of everybody here.
Sure.
In a age demographic, the older, maybe not so much, but definitely slightly older than me and younger. I think I'm still a little bit connected, but we'll see.
Yeah. Well, it certainly seems like it with the podcast and how much community outreach you have. I feel like everybody I've talked to has been like, you met James? And I was like, yeah, I have.
I love this community. Betsy and I were just talking this morning about taking vacations and stuff, and it's like we were talking about taking a trip to Chicago with the kids, maybe like in April or May. Just like a few nights in Chicago, go to the museums, hang out there for a little bit. But we're gonna fly. Shout out to Contour, because that's going to be a pretty nice flight from Manistee.
Big step up for flight amenities. Yeah,
I'm really excited that they've taken the step for the bigger jets for sure.
I mean, nothing against Cape Air. They served, to my understanding, they served Manistee pretty well. Had that connection still to the Chicago area, which is huge for a community like Manistee, but having that jet service with bigger capacity and a little quicker and maybe a little more reliable too as an airline. I mean, that makes Manistee more attractive as a place where now people from Traverse City might consider, hey, it's maybe a little cheaper to fly out of Manistee. I'm going to take that hour drive down and fly out of Manistee to go to Chicago. So I mean, just having that is huge asset for us.
Well, I mean, like this morning when we were talking about it, I'm like, I haven't been on a plane in 20 years. We were talking about like our kids getting on a plane. This will be their first time. Like, I haven't flown in literally 20 years.
Okay.
Like we just always don't go anywhere.
Did you ever? So, and when you do go somewhere, it's always just you drive.
We drive.
Okay.
Well, I'll say it over and over again. I've said it on multiple podcasts. It's just where we live. It's the most beautiful place on earth, as far as I'm concerned. And taking a trip with my buddies once a year up to the UP or something like that, or just hanging out within an hour or two drive is almost enough for me.
Yeah, I mean, moving up here, that's kind of why. I love fly fishing. Fly fishing's one of my big hobbies.
Well, you nailed it.
Exactly. And so when I was looking for a job and I was scrolling through LinkedIn, Manistee stuck out to me for that very reason, because I was like, okay, I know the rivers up there, I know the lake shore, like that is just a gem up there. And that was one of the big draws for me. It wasn't even necessarily the work I was doing or the pay or the organization or anything like that, even though the chamber's terrific. It's more so the natural beauty really captured me, and knowing that you have the natural resources like blue ribbon trout streams, right? Wow, I can drive 20 minutes, be in the national forest with no cell service, waist deep in the little Manistee, trying to catch a brown trout. Heck yeah, that sounds like a good time to me. So, best environment.
Before we started, when I brought up the tourism authority recap meeting we had the other night, one of the things that Sammy brought up, and I hope I'm saying it right, but for sure we're number one. Manistee is number one in the state for fishing. It's been rated number one in the state.
Yeah.
And that right there is amazing. I mean, I don't know if this is like something I misheard years ago, but I swear there's a big trout tournament or something like that here where like ESPN films it.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, somebody will call me out on that, but
I'll have to go digging for
that.
I'm
pretty sure at one point we've been televised for some major fishing event here on ESPN. But then you couple that with what the work Ironfish is doing in terms of helping with habitats for, I think, the grayling. Is that? Yeah. And then we last year we did the International Fly Fishing Festival or Fishing Festival at the Vogue, and they're planning on doing that again, and that was a big success. So yeah, outdoor recreation is something I'm super passionate about. Now, I'm not much of a fisherman at all.
Okay, noted.
I grew up on a marina. I did my fair share of fishing when I was young. I did my fair share of working on charter boats and stuff, but maybe that took a little bit of the passion out of me for that. But,
sure.
I was an avid hunter, not so much anymore. I just find that my my brain doesn't work too well when I have to sit someplace for a few hours.
Okay, gotcha.
But cycling, mountain biking, running, going to the beaches. The number one beach in Michigan is right here in Manistee, which is super rad.
Yeah, and cycling, something I know is really popular in this area. I just haven't gotten into that yet, but that's something I'm very intrigued on getting into in this area, because I've heard from several people I've worked with and just interacted with in the community really raving about some of the, both mountain biking and then also road biking just north of Onekama. That's fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, even right here in our backyard with Big M and all the trails out here, like at Nordhaus. I got into mountain bike, or gravel biking, I should say, probably about 6 years ago now. And I got a little gravel bike and was just riding back and forth to work.
Okay.
And then Dylan Walker, Zach Pulowski, really into gravel biking, and they kind of drew me into that, which is where like our other event, Rusty Fish, came from. But yeah, so I truly enjoy that. But for me, it's mostly like, let's just go like 20 miles and then have a 6-pack of 2 Hearted or something.
Sounds like you need to start a bike shop, though.
Yeah.
We need a bike shop.
I would
we need
love
a bike
shop in Manistee. I mean, they've got 2 that are doing well in Ludington. Having one here would be...
Spindrift is one, right, down in Ludington?
Yep, and Trailhead.
Yep, Trailhead is the other one. But I would love to see one here in Manistee. And yeah, that's something that's been identified as kind of a missing market opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't really, I know it's hard work.
Yeah.
And, you gotta sell bikes just like car dealerships gotta sell cars, and you do a fair amount of work with respect to tune-ups and fixing and stuff like that. But, the Outpost years ago sold bikes.
Really?
25 years ago or whenever, when they first
started. Do the tune-up as well?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Have Kyle in the back fixing up bikes?
Yeah, dude.
All right.
And then,
I can see it.
They've evolved over the years. And again, I mean, like, I love the Outpost. I love their coffee. They do a great job there.
Yeah, they're real anchor business too. I love all the
100%.
I love the aesthetic that they go for with their clothing. It really hits the nail right on the head with like just outdoor casual, if you will. So I love the Outpost here in town.
So to circle back just real quick, you graduated from Michigan State, and like what drove you into the direction of, because looking at your bio on LinkedIn, I mean, it's been fairly community driven the whole time. I mean, you were a grant researcher for Michigan State, you were a community development fellow for the Community Economic Development Association of Michigan, and then you've dovetailed that nicely into this position as Director of Economic Development for Manistee. It sounds to me, or it reads to me, that you're moving towards eventually being a city manager.
I'm just going to put this on the record right now. I want nothing to do with city management. City managers have probably one of the toughest jobs out of all municipal, like out of any type of government unit, whether it's county, state, local. City managers have probably one of the most stressful, just time-consuming jobs ever, and they their compensation is fairly nice when it comes to local units of government, but I mean, even like county administrators and certain state level officials have it a little nicer because you're not interacting with the local populace nearly as much, where city managers can really be brutalized by, if there's a community problem, you're the target, right? You're the guy who's gonna be put on the spot. But no, I mean, it's interesting because I always knew I wanted to kind of give back in some way and be people oriented. So going into college, being like, I want to do physical therapy. I have ADD, dyslexia, so I knew I was like, I want to move. I want to be active and just be engaging with people. So that was one of the routes. I was like, all right, yeah, if I can help somebody through an injury, help, mentally and physically just recover and help them in that way, I think that's a great career where I could leave every day feeling fairly fulfilled. But kind of quickly fell into the path of social science because I started reading just some material. I was like, wow, this is like really interesting. Sociology and anthropology and economics, like there's a lot there to unpack, and it really dictates how us as humans interact with each other, in the way we make our decisions. So, there's almost like that psychological piece embedded into sociology, economics, anthropology, all that's blended into one. And as I got closer to my senior year, I knew I wanted to stay in Michigan, just from a lifestyle perspective. All my family's here, and I was dating somebody who is now my fiance.
Congratulations.
And, yeah, thank you very much. Next May, so it is the wedding date. But I knew I wanted to be in Michigan. I knew I wasn't going to be able to go abroad or out of state. I knew, Michigan's my home. I want to be able to serve Michigan. And so I picked up those opportunities with grant writing and being able to serve some other more community-minded organizations like St. Vincent de Paul out of Lansing that does immigration work for the greater Lansing area. Just kept finding a way that I could give to Michigan communities, but also have the lifestyle that I was looking for. And I kind of identified, all right, hey, you know what? Economic development in working with local units of government, in working with business, was something that really intrigued me, because you had that person-to-person interaction. A lot of it is just talking with people, being able to listen to them, but also having some mentally stimulating, problem solving in there as well. Is how can I create a innovative capital stack, with a real estate redevelopment project, right? Or how can I help a business come into our community and identify financing that's going to work for them, right? So it was that balance of mentally stimulating activity while also being people-oriented and still helping kind of move the needle for a specific community. And community for me is a lot of different things, right? Sure. It could be a geographical community. It could be a specific, demographic of people. So when I say community, it can be used pretty broadly. But, now in my career, it's definitely more geographical community. It's the county of Manistee, right? At least in my current role. So there's a lot there and a lot that went into kind of shaping that.
Is there like a high level description that you can speak to on what your role is as economic director for Manistee?
Yeah.
To explain to people at home when they're watching and they're listening and they're like, well, what exactly is
Sure.
it that you
Yeah.
do?
I mean, economic development's one of those fields that has a lot of misnomers in it, and is also very complex because we touch a lot of subfields, if you will, right? So, I mean, at a very high level, we're really enacting a group of policies, programs that move the needle in a community's economic environment, right? So we're improving the economic ecosystem of a community by implementing policies and programs in legislation that is making doing business really easier in that community, right? But there are really 4 pillars of economic development. You have workforce development, you have real estate development, you have entrepreneurship and small business development, and then you have placemaking, right? So placemaking is that creating a community where people want to live, right? So outside of just work, what amenities do I want to raise my family in, right? I want a good school system. I want nice public amenities. I want to be able to walk down a river walk. I want to make sure my sidewalks are more or less taken care of, right? And if I am in a wheelchair, I'm able to actually use my public amenities because they're well kept, right? That's kind of like that feeling of place. And place is really important in our field. And it's transitioned from the 80s and 90s where everybody was just focused on let's get the biggest employers possible into your community, where now it's more about let's increase the standard of living for the people who are already here by improving the quality of place that they're living in, right? So a lot of that here in Manistee, look at the downtown. I mean, we have amazing amenities in downtown, right? And it's just looking at ways to how can we even make that even better, right? How can the Riverwalk become even better and more accessible for people? So little tweaks like that. But that's kind of getting in the weeds now. But so high level, yeah, those were the 4 pillars of economic development. And within my role, it's really fun because every day isn't the same because you're operating in one of those pillars on a different day, right? So one day I could be talking to somebody who's looking to put in housing, right? So I have my hand in more of a real estate development field. But then other days I could be interacting with West Shore Community College or Michigan Works and working with workforce development, right? Trying to figure out talent pipelines on a local level. How do we get, local talent to jobs in our community with the PCA or Martin Marietta, right? And then there's also that placemaking piece where, at the chamber, we are also the administrators of the Downtown Development Authority. So in that field, we're able to really support that mission of creating and revitalizing downtown and creating an attractive place for people to live in and play in, right?
I am a, I guess, self-proclaimed downtown guy. I just love our downtown. I try to, be involved where I can from a county aspect, but I'm always drawn to downtown. I guess how difficult or how easy is it for you to not put so much focus on downtown because you have the whole county? Am I correct in that?
Yeah, so that's absolutely correct. We're the whole
I think
county.
a lot of people just kind of zone in on downtown as where the focus is, but obviously we have a very large county of business. How do you splice that? For an importance level, like?
Yeah, so I mean, for me, from an operations standpoint, it's really trying to break down, all right, one day's just for, really trying to focus on all the needs of the downtown, so then the next day I can really focus on, countywide stuff. So it's breaking it down, trying to compartmentalize it is one way I personally keep it. But I'm happy you brought this up, is it is really important to remember that the Manistee Area Chamber of Commerce, it's Manistee area, right? And it's because it's county-wide, right? And we do have a lot of communities throughout the county that are greater than just downtown Manistee. And obviously, downtown Manistee has the biggest concentration of commerce occurring, right? But that doesn't mean that all our focus should be there. So being intentional about getting out to those communities and being able to say, hey, we're here, we're present, what are your needs, right? Being able to go to Bear Lake, going to their village councils or Onekama's, planning commissions and village councils and saying, hey, what vacant space do you guys have that you want to see filled, right? So that's something that I've been pretty intentional about just in my first couple months here, just making sure, being cognizant that we're going out to those communities that have just smaller populations and less commerce occurring and saying, hey, what do you want to see in your community and what's the vision here? Because we're not the people who should be dictating the vision of a community. It's community members, right, who need to be driving that. In a way, I'm still getting to learn all the communities of Manistee, so I can't come into a community and say, hey, I've studied urban planning. I know the best urban design for you. I know exactly what needs to come in here because I looked at the numbers and did a supply and demand breakdown, and this, you guys are missing X, Y, and Z. If somebody doesn't want a certain type of retail in their community and they say that and they voice that as a community at large in a public hearing or in a public meeting, that's something that we have to be receptive of in my field, right? And continue to say, okay, we hear you, but working with them to identify vacant commercial parcels or potentially residential parcels if housing's something they want to see in their community, which in large part that is from what I've picked up so far. But that's one way that we're really trying to stay intentional about, we are a countywide organization. We need to continue to engage in conversation across all communities in this county and not just downtown. And it's nice having that Downtown Development Authority under the Manistee Area Chamber of Commerce because it gives us that direct connection to the downtown in the local merchants here in downtown. But we also have to be aware that, okay, a lot of our head of household job creation is happening outside of downtown. It's happening in Manistee Township, in Filer Township, with our industry leaders, right? And then even outside of that, we still have industry leaders like MR Products and CBS Solar out in Coatmish, right? And so being aware that these are huge employment hubs for these communities, right? I mean, MR Products employs a lot of Coatmish's population. So being aware that, hey, we need to make sure that we are doing everything we can to support these corporations and helping them be successful in what they do so they can continue to serve the local communities, right? Because at the end of the day, that's my mission, is how do we serve the local communities, and we do that through serving our enterprises that are here in Manistee County, because they're the ones being able to give head of household jobs to so many community members, right?
So I don't know if it's a misconception, it could be a misconception of mine. Is your phone ringing off the hook?
I I stay busy. I stay very busy. I have a lot of, I do have a lot of calls coming in, and it's from a variety of people.
Sure.
And that kind of goes back to why I love this field, is because one day I could be talking to an individual who wants to start a at-home childcare center, and she thought I would be the best avenue to go through to start that, because she has questions about, how do I start a small business? How do I create an LLC? I have no idea. I'm just a mom with 3 kids, and I want to make a little extra money on the side, so I want to bring in 3 other kids to have a daycare facility in my own home, right? But then the next day I could be talking to a larger corporation that has a little more footing under it, and they employ 30 people in our community, and they're saying, hey, you know what, we need some help getting funding from the Michigan Economic Development Corporation. Can you help us make that connection? It's like, yeah, I have the in there. So I'm able to bridge that gap and be that connector, right, in all levels of entrepreneurship, I guess, right? All levels of industry, whether it's that small mom and pop shop that's just looking to get off the ground, or if it's a bigger corporation, being able to bring in other partners and help make those connections for those bigger corporations it's exciting, but it keeps me busy for sure.
Oh,
it does keep me busy.
I'm already getting anxiety.
No.
Just thinking about it. When you get, I guess one question that I for sure wanted to shore up was, how do you extend a hand out into the world, like kind of on a, let's say we have a parcel here in Manistee.
Sure.
Or better yet, we have a large commercial property that's vacant. And you think that there might be an idea for something there.
Yeah.
And reaching out to a developer somewhere, like, what does that look like? I know I asked that question to different people, but I think you're the person, you're in the role. I could be completely wrong. Like when I talked to Mark Miller, to me it seemed like in that role, it's an opportunity to go outside of the community even and say, hey, come here. We have an opportunity, at least take a look at it. Is that fair?
Oh, absolutely. I think, Mark's obviously right on the money with that. We have that opportunity, and we are those ones who are the advocates for our community, so being able to have that Rolodex almost of contacts where it's like, oh, hey, I've been to Grand Rapids, Traverse City, and made these connections with people who, have a little more money and are able to do apartment projects or do commercial development projects. Like I have a list of people I know of. That's part of our role, definitely. So if there was a commercial property, kind of walking through that process, it starts off working with local stakeholders, right? So normally that municipality that's in, whether it's, the city of Manistee Township, working with their planning commission and saying, okay, hey, like what are you guys willing to actually put here? Working with the landowner themselves, making sure, if it's on the market already, great, because it shows their desire to sell. If it's not, hey, are you willing to sell? And if so, at what price point? And making sure they're always in the know of what I'm doing. But then once you do make that step outside the community, it's kind of identifying what would work here and what does the community need. So right now a big discussion is housing, right? So when we look at parcels, normally housing's top of mind. So we go, okay, how do we create more housing for our community? Once you identify that, kind of have a good idea of the local unit of government's on board, the landowners kind of willing to play ball, then we go out and can say, okay, hey, I know 5 people who have done similar projects or have a desire to move up to Manistee and put a footprint in Manistee, and I'll reach out to them in different forms. It can be a phone call, it can be LinkedIn. For example, I had somebody come up here and did some site tours with them, and it was just I knew the guy when I was living in Nuevo, and reached out to him. I said, hey, I think your business is well positioned to be up here. You want to come up to Manistee? He said, heck yeah, I've had family up here. I've been eyeing Manistee. I'll be happy to come up. So, we had a day where we were able to show off a couple sites, and it was a really exciting interaction, and hopefully something will come out of that. But it's just, it's informal in a lot of ways.
Sure.
It's not something that is really rigid and it's the system. It's how do you know these people and what's going to be the best avenue of connection. So it could be just a LinkedIn message, it could be a phone call, it could be something really formal where you're walking through if they're a bigger company, walking through all the levels of their company and trying to get it in front of somebody. I'm lucky I have a pretty good network of people, just because I've been able to interact with a lot of people out of GR, just by getting out of Manistee, being able to attend conferences and attend different events that I know builders are going to be at, and people who do this kind of work will be at, and making connections that way. And then you take their business card back, and all of a sudden, rather than having to go through a company's whole procedure and 7 levels of authority through that company, it's like, oh, I have the business card of the director there, so I can just give him a call and he can fast track a property for us, right? Or at least take a look at it.
Sure.
So that's kind of how the process works. But I mean, we are advocates. We do have that opportunity to really branch out and be advocates for Manistee on a statewide level. And that's really part of the Chamber's mission as well, is being advocates locally here, right? If you have an enterprise here in Manistee and need local advocacy, we're that organization that can help provide that, and we continue to provide legislative advocacy, for pro-business legislation from a state level with our partnership with the Northern Chamber Alliance, right? That helps more rural areas have good legislation coming from the state, so it's not impacting smaller business that isn't operating in a place like Grand Rapids where their cash flow is a lot heavier. Right. So.
What about vacant commercial real estate? What I mean by that is when you see properties that have been vacant for a number of years, there are some that are actively trying to, let's say, like remodel the property.
Yeah.
Put housing upstairs, or try to encourage business to come in. Speaking more for downtown, because of what downtown offers, like say for me, for example, when I had Manistee Beverage Company, I wasn't leveraged, and it wasn't overly expensive for me to get into. But when you have a business, and I think I'm rambling here a little bit too much. Let me try to circle back on this a little bit in my mind. We've got properties downtown that have been vacant for a long time.
Okay.
What does the chamber, the director of economic development, and the DDA, like what is the focus to change that, or to? I'll use an example of the Music Vault. Good people, good intention, bought the property, had a plan, were working on getting funding. Some things fell through. Now it's up for sale again. How do we encourage, aside from a real estate sign in front saying it's for sale, to introduce that to people? It's a massive project, all right? Yeah. So it's going to be close to $500,000 to purchase. It's probably going to be $1 million to renovate. I mean, so what kind of help, what kind of discussion and conversation can we have to bring somebody in to like purchase that particular property, or even another one that's just been vacant for years? Yeah,
I mean, so there's a couple different elements to that question. I know from like a DDA standpoint, for example, right, that's somewhere where we can put into place, attempt to put into place, proactive programs where we're able to give assistance in some way, right, with like a facade improvement program that had just ended in October. That's something that, trying to create more programs like that where we can offer direct financial assistance to a person who's already undertaking a project. That's one way where we can really help move some of those vacant properties that are such heavy lifts, because you're right, that Music Vault property, I mean,
it's a big lift.
It's a big lift for a lot of people just to get it activated, right? Not even to where the highest and best use, but just activated at a very base level. It's a heavy lift. But from a DDA standpoint, really implementing those programs and trying to be proactive with whoever is operating it and offering, hey, is there anything else we can do for you? From a chamber standpoint, we are those advocates again. So if somebody is able to buy that property, being advocates, helping them with the city processes, right? If there's some type of zoning that you might have to go through, and trying to help navigate that, that's a big piece of what we're able to assist with. And then kind of in my role more directly, it is, I'm able to really help find that person who I know has the financial wherewithal to execute a project like that.
Right.
And it's really working with the current property owners to say, hey, be really intentional about who you give this to, because it's a property that, from what I've heard, has been vacant for 20 years, right? And it's a legacy problem for the downtown, where how can we make sure that the next person who buys it doesn't sit on it for 4 years and then it just goes back up to market and nothing's moved, right? And it's been 4 years and now it's 2028 and it's still not being utilized. So working with that current owner to try to be intentional about who it goes to, and then once they do actually make that sale, interacting with that developer, making contact and saying, hey, like, this is who I am, these are some of the services I can offer you. And a lot of those services are, hey, I understand how we can leverage some local funds, some state funds to bring down that upfront capital cost and make that project feasible for you, make it cash flow, and make it more desirable so it can actually get done, right? So that's where I really plug in is, try to assist in finding a person. Obviously I'm not a real estate agent, but I do have some contacts where, okay, hey, that's top of mind. I can contact that person, see if they're interested in a project of this scope and scale, or if I know a business that is looking to expand and they're from out of Manistee County and they're looking to come into Manistee County, maybe they're the right person to contact, reach out to and say, hey, we got this great space. I think it's a good fit for you. But once the purchase actually takes place, that's where more assistance can come in with making those proper connections, helping navigate local processes, and also helping leverage local funds, right? Whether it's an Oprah district or some type of brownfield, just pointing them in the right direction and working with our local units to see how we can make the project come to fruition. Because that's the problem, is people buy it, they think they have the money to do it, they get into it, it's more expensive than they think. So that's kind of another part where we can play is say, hey, you understand this is going to be a $2 million lift. This isn't I'm going to dump $500,000 into this and it's going to be good to go, right? So making sure that it's apparent, the lift that it's going to be. So
what about city-owned property? And what I mean by that is I don't know if this has happened in other cities or not. This is just something I was thinking about before we sat down. Would the city have any interest, or is there ever been a discussion where, hey, like, maybe we just buy the property, refurbish the entire thing, and make it a multi-use, whether it's housing upstairs and then shops down below? And I'll use that property as an example because it's so large. It's been vacant for 20 years. Let's do something with it. Let's make it a city-owned property that has the ability to pay the city back.
Sure. So I know that's a facet that the DDA can really look at and use. I'm pretty certain that the Vogue was an opportunity like that, where the Vogue Theater, when that renovation took place in 2013, that the DDA was a partner in property acquisition. And DDAs are unique because how they're able to leverage public funds, or they're able to really put it towards economic development purposes in things that are going to help lift up the entire community. So if buying a blighted property fulfills that mission, then that's an avenue they can take from when we talk about the city. The city is a little more restricted in how they're able to use taxpayer dollars, obviously. So the DDA is that arm where we are able to navigate that, and that's something that we definitely have had conversations and looked at that. Obviously, with me being fairly new in this world, trying to get my feet wet. It's a pretty big lift, and you have to be very intentional about a program like that, because you have seen that across the state. You've seen DDAs buy property, and they might not renovate it themselves, but at least they're able to buy it, package it up with the help of local partners, maybe do some, hey, this is what this property could potentially look like, create some renderings, and then they'll put it out to market, and it'll have a greater chance at succeeding because they'll be really, really intentional about who gets it in return, right? And there's some controversy in that, because then it's almost like picking winners or losers, right? But when it comes to a property like a music vault, where it's been a legacy property, there are times where that's necessary to get it in a space where it could be activated, right, and have all the information up front so the person buying it understands what the environmentals are, what the hazardous materials assessments are, and understanding, okay, this isn't going to be a walk in the park for me, right? I'm going to have to do X, Y, and Z to get this to where it needs to be. But the DDA is definitely the outlet that could do that type of programming. And that's something that I would love to be able to activate in the future once, I kind of get more acclimated and get a better understanding of the community's tolerance of that as well. Because that's a big piece, is, are people tolerant of that? Because some people really don't like that idea of a public entity buying property. It can be like a unsavory taste for some people.
Yeah, stay off of Facebook.
Yeah.
Don't read the comments.
Yeah, luckily I'm not on there, so. luckily I don't look at any community Facebook posts. I've heard mostly bad things. So I tend to be like, all right, just to put my blinders on.
I'm a subtle troll on some of those pages, but I don't.
Just a menace out there in some of those?
I don't even.
What are the popular Facebook groups for the community?
I don't even want to give them any clout. Maybe after this.
We'll move on.
Yeah. I don't even read the comments on my stuff. I stay away from it. Good and bad.
Yeah.
Because it could just get pretty annoying sometimes.
Sure.
But I do watch a lot of the local stuff just because I want to kind of get a feel of, is it just a few people that are pissed about something, or is it like a big deal?
Yeah, I mean, it's where it changes too, in my mind. When you look at our levels of government.
Yeah.
I mean, people underestimate the value of just local communities, right? Like that's where change is occurring today.
Betcha.
It's at a local level, right? There was this idea in like the 40s and 50s that the federal government was like our problem solver, right? They would come in, and even the state to some degree, like, oh, these are the units that we look at, and they're the problem solvers. They're the ones who are going to come in, do something innovative. That's completely changed. And people understand now that it is local units that drive true community problem solving, right? They're the ones offering up solutions who can actually help leverage resources and help come up with solutions to legacy problems to create a more vibrant, attractive community, right? And solve the local needs, right? Whether it's housing or childcare, it's not really looking for the feds to help assist. So there's kind of been that change in mindset, and I buy into that. I think it is really at the local level where we see change, and a lot can happen at a local level, and that's something that starts with the people too, right? It starts with, if you have a loud minority of people who are gonna kill a project because they're not happy about it, that's the local unit having a huge impact in a community, right? I mean, it starts with people and how their thoughts and feelings, and if it is just a small group of people that have a very loud voice, that can be detrimental or beneficial, depending on what they're advocating for.
Yeah, I'm huge on local, as much as possible, because the state and federal, I mean, they can do some good things too, but if you really want change, you have to focus locally.
Absolutely, and I am in agreement with that. And I think it's definitely coming around where people realize that in local units of government and in DDAs and different operations like that can have become more and more effective, I feel like, in solving problems like housing, childcare, those staple issues that we've been struggling with.
They just keep coming up, coming up.
Yeah. And that'll be the case too, right? Because after we solve those problems, it's going to be talent attraction, and where's our workforce at, and looking at how do we backfill trades, right? That, when was the last time you saw a new trades company somebody in their 20s start their own company in the trades? It's like most of these companies are run by people in their 40s and 50s that are aging out. So now you don't have enough people to do, masonry work at all. They're all backlogged up till, like 2 years, and there's nobody coming up behind them saying, hey, I'm hungry for some work, and, I'm willing to figure it out. I might not be the best because I don't have 20 years of experience, but I'm a new guy, just got out of trade school, and looking to start my own company. So that's something that is probably going to be an issue here, and it is actively an issue, but it'll become one of those staple issues that we talk about more and more, because right now housing and childcare are those two kind of big hot topic issues that we talk about, because it is so needed right now. Is how do we let people join the workforce and be able to, help have a dual income or even a single income if they don't have access to childcare, right? And then housing. How do you move up here into a place where so many people want to be if there really isn't an affordable housing stock for people, in people who want to have a single family home rather than an apartment building that's not built prior to 1930. Right? It's people do want newer builds. So how do you kind of solve that problem for people? And it's multifaceted issues, but a part of that definitely is.
I just heard something on the radio yesterday, a stat from the National Board of Realtors that the average new home buyer age today is 38.
Really?
And combined income is, I think, $90,000, which seems like a lot. But just, I think they said like 10 years ago that median income was like 70. And the age was like, I think, 29 or 31 for the first-time home buyer. So they're getting older, waiting, and earning more before they buy their first home. Well, I think they have to, because today, I think the average is like $300,000.
Yeah,
that's nowhere near my first house.
I kick myself a little bit. I go on Zillow. I had some.
I'm addicted to Zillow.
I had some. I am too. I'm just scrolling nowadays. I just go in. I'm like, what's on the market? What just hit? Yeah. I'm looking for 10 acres on the water. If anybody knows of 10 acres on the water where I can just walk out to the little Manistee, let me know.
It's not $500,000.
Yeah, that's not $500,000. Keeping it like that 200,000 range.
Oh yeah.
No, I had trouble moving up here. For the job. I accepted the job offer from the chamber, and being able to find a place up here was challenging, and actually having to live through the housing crisis. Everybody talks about it, but until you actually have to move to an area and then be like, oh, there is no housing that I can actually afford if I wanted to buy, and then even the rental stock is so saturated that you can't find anything because everything's taken. Our occupancy rate's like 99%, right? And it's really tricky to find rentals. So I was really lucky to find the rental that I did, but it took a lot of work and a lot of searching and a lot of contacting property management companies and touring a lot of different places before I found a place to actually stay that was at a good price point and it was a decent living environment. But I go on Zillow. My point was I go on Zillow and I slide the scales back pre-2019. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, are you kidding me? 2019, 2018 housing prices. This is nationally, but specifically in Manistee, you're able to slide it back and you see homes for like $70,000 that are nice homes. Sure, they're built in the 1930s, but it's like, this is a good place to live. Yeah. And now it's priced at $210. So wow, that is incredible. It's a huge jump, and I know people like me who haven't been in the workforce for a long time and have that savings. It's terrifying to see, like, man, will I ever buy a home? I don't know. Renting seems pretty nice. So
Betsy and I were up. That's my wife. Her name's Betsy. We were up in Traverse City on Friday.
Oh, Traverse City,
Friday.
Tricky. Yeah.
And just kind of doing the touristy thing, walking around. And she wanted to go to this plant shop that's connected to the Grand Traverse something. And anyways, we went in, very nice little shop. But before we got there, we were just driving down these back, like, side streets of downtown, and these little chalet houses. And I made the comment, I'm like, that house is probably $500,000. So back to the plant shop, we're in there speaking to the owner, very nice lady, and through conversation, we said we're from Manistee. She's like, oh, we love Manistee. In fact, we have friends that just moved there because of housing is so inexpensive there. Inexpensive here. But when you talk to people here, they're like, man, it's so expensive. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
So when I said about the house being $500,000, she's like, yeah, it's you can't buy anything here. And I didn't even want to ask her what her rent was, in the particular shop she was in. And they're just like an hour and 25 minutes away. It's a completely different landscape in terms of cost.
Yep. Traverse City's, their growth pattern that they've experienced over the last 20 years is incredible.
I don't think anybody wants that here.
No, exactly. Nobody wants it here. It's incredible in the fact of how aggressive it's been and how overwhelmed they are.
Right.
Now, because you talk to everybody who's been in Traverse City, who's, local from Traverse City, who's been there for 30, 40 years. I mean, and it's the traffic, it's the housing cost, right? I mean, everything has just run amok in a way. I mean, obviously just the traffic comes from having such population density, and the housing costs are just astronomical because you are getting people who are bringing outside money into your community from Chicago and are willing to pay, top dollar for that house on the lake, right? And yeah, that's definitely something that is important. They're an important example when you talk about development to keep in mind, because a big part of our job is toggling. How do you create, a big part of our economy is tourism. So how do you create an environment where people still want to come up here, spend your money in our town, but at the same time take care of residents who have been here and live here, and this is their home, and they are a two-income household in, work in head of household jobs here in Manistee, right? You got to make sure you toggle that line of we're protecting those residents from out of control growth, and that comes from having really intentional growth patterns, right? And that's something that Traverse City, I think they probably could have done better planning, 20 years ago. And that's something that being intentional is really important about what we do, right? What you're trying to attract or bring in is something that's really important, right? Because you want to make sure that you're intentional about, whether it's a housing development or a new company coming into your community, where are they being placed? What byproducts do they produce, and what resources might they need to operate, right? And what might they take away too, right? Like a housing project, if you plop that in the middle of the national forest, it might not be a great look, right? Because of the land that's out there and the natural beauty and being able to protect that, right? Or putting factories on the lakeshore, right? On Lake Michigan, that might not be the best place for them, right? So being really intentional about placement and then what you're bringing in, because you don't want something that is going to bring in chemical hazardous material and do unnecessary damage to your community in your natural resources, right? Even if they are providing a lot of jobs. But
right.
So being intentional is a really big piece of what economic development is, and about when we talk about growth, right? It's what does the community want from a growth standpoint? Are they looking just for everybody to have a higher quality of life here? Are they looking for more disposable income? Are they looking for more head of household jobs? Or is it something where, hey, we really want to lean into tourism, and tourism's our bag, right? And I've heard from a lot of different community members making sure that, hey, we have that tourism aspect. That's really fantastic. We need to make sure that is prominent in a driver, because it is a driver, and we see that across northern Michigan. But at the same time, being intentional about that traditional economic development of how do we go do job creation and find corporations and help corporations who are already here expand to create more jobs, and then also help attract more corporations and investment into our area to create brand new opportunities for people.
That was a really good explanation. That was awesome.
Yeah.
I like how you parse that with toggling between business growth and tourism, because I do believe that tourism is the main driver here.
Oh, I mean, absolutely. I mean, talk to the tourism authority, Sammy at the tourism authority. I mean, it is such a big piece of economic development, and that's unavoidable. And I know that some people might feel like, hey, I don't want any tourism, but that is really unavoidable. And when you talk about what's leading a lot of northern Michigan communities, it is tourism, right? It's tourism, and it's making sure that you're setting your community up for success for that. But yeah, toggling. It's always about how do we also create head of household jobs that might be a little more traditional and for people who've always been here, right? And create opportunity for people who want to come up here, right? And maybe they're brought up here from a tourism standpoint, and then they realize, oh, I can get a had a household job
right
down the road.
Or buy a building.
Yeah, or buy a building, right?
I had somebody call me once on that building in particular.
Sure.
And I'm like, I don't know why you're calling me. I'm not a real estate agent. They just wanted to pick my brain a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm like, I think
that's a heck of a space, though.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful.
I said, I think you want to find something a little bit smaller, and maybe at least something. They wanted to do like something similar to what I had at Manistee Beverage Company.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
And I'm like, I think that property's massively too big for what you're trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
But not to push people away, but I'm just like, first of all, I'm not the guy, so call somebody.
Sure,
you know.
sure,
But,
sure.
Yeah, I do find that a lot of that happens, and it happened over COVID when we were sort of open up here. So people from downstate Chicago, Grand Rapids, or whatever, were coming up here and going, I can get a piece of property for a third of the price that I can in my town, or city. So let's scoop it up. And I do think to a certain perspective, it hurt us a little bit because now we just have properties that are owned with nothing going on.
Yep.
But
yeah, I mean, and that's a legacy problem across the state, especially when you get into. I feel like it's more so. It doesn't even have to be a tourism town. It's more so a rural communities. You see a lot of absent owners, people who do make that like, oh, it's cheap land, and I'm able to, live in my California home and just sit on that property for 20, 30 years and let it get, dilapidated and then come back and sell it off once it's worth a little more. But that's always a big problem too, is how do you engage people like that who are so far removed from the community, right, and don't have much interest in it. That's a frustrating barrier to operate in, especially people who own such great pieces of property that have unlimited potential. You're like, wow, I could really see something community oriented and that would really serve the community. Go in here and people want this piece, but they're just stubborn and don't pick up the phone, hard to get in contact with. Once they do, they're asking some outrageous price. It's like, it makes you pull your hair out, at times. So
how long have you been here now?
So I've been here for, I think, going on 6 months.
Okay.
Here, so it's still very, very new, getting acclimated to the community.
What are some of the things that you like best about the community?
Well, kind of what I mentioned earlier on, fly fisher. So the fact that I can go to Little Manistee off of South County line and just giving away my spot.
Honey hole.
Yeah, giving away my spot. 6 Mile Bridge. But going out there, I mean, that's an absolute favorite. I live right off of First Street, so I have the ability to just walk right into the downtown, too. I think having that walkability has been incredible. And I don't think Manistee gets enough credit for how walkable it is.
Dude, it's so walkable.
I mean,
we have plenty of parking, and it's so walkable.
Yeah, it is so walkable, and I love being able to actually go from my front door downtown in less than 5 minutes, And I was in a community before this where there was no restaurant. They had one grocery store. So Manistee, for me, feels like a self-contained community where I'm like, wow, this is like a metropolis.
Yeah, we do have a lot of good stuff going on here, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, and you have some amazing restaurants in the community, and I think being able to have those options, for me, I'm a bit of a foodie, so love being able to actually have options to eat at. But the beach has been also probably top 3 for me. Being on the water, I've always wanted to be in a lakeshore community, and being able to just go to the beach whenever you want after like a hard day of work, maybe you're frustrated with something, being able to just go sit on the beach for an hour and then get in the water, it's like that'll clear your head.
Yeah, you're speaking my language, dude. I mean, we will spend hours at the beach.
Yeah, I think so far I've discovered that my favorite spot it's First Street, and then probably Portage Point up in Onekama. To being able to
Portage is fine.
Yeah,
that's a gem up there, Portage Point. That could be something that is just. But again, that's multi-million-dollar project. But I could see that being like a Dirty Dancing thing, not the Dirty Dancing, but like the old school.
Maybe the Dirty Dancing as well, though.
Maybe the Dirty Dancing, yeah. But that old school vibe up there with the
Yep.
Like this is our getaway every summer kind of place.
Well, the beach up there too it's a hidden gem because
it really is.
If you're not in the know, you're not. I mean, you're not going to know about it.
Right.
You kind of got to weasel your way back, past the inn and go down that road probably for another like half mile. before you get there, and it's kind of hidden. So I like to think that it's a little less populated than some of the beaches here in town, but still, I mean, all the lakeshore up here, whether it's the beach or actually trails, I mean, it's incredible having access to the waterfront. I loved it so far, but that's something that was foreign to me. Growing up, we never had, Metro Detroit didn't have a lot of really nice beach like that.
I couldn't do it. I mean, living here my whole life, I couldn't live anywhere that wasn't close to a large body of water. I mean, and like I said, I don't fish, I don't boat or anything like that, but I really enjoy just hanging out by the water, swimming, drinking beers on the sand.
Do you dive, scuba dive at all, or no? No, okay.
No, I've gone scuba diving, but yeah, that's not really. I'm really kind of boring, but I do what I like to do. I do a lot of it.
Sure.
So I do a lot of this. I do a lot of running and biking.
Yeah.
And I like hanging out at the beach and just kind of hanging out with friends and family. That's really kind of my niche these days. But
I mean, what more do you need? Though I feel
you don't need a whole lot more.
You don't want too many hobbies. I've run into that problem where I have between fly fishing, I do a little bit of diving, and then also I feel like I have a couple other hobbies that are slipping my mind right now. But I mean, just between those two, you almost have to divvy up your time and be like, what do I really want to allocate my resources to? Right?
Yeah, I am big on shrinking the amount of things that I do. Yeah. The more and more I'm kind of semi-retired, I just kind of less is more with me.
Sure.
It helps the bandwidth for sure.
Sure.
Just a couple more things I wanted to talk to you about. How is the transition going now that Stacy's left or in the process of leaving? Carmen taking over the president and CEO role at the interim level now, but I would probably say that she'll be tapped to be the full-on. I don't know. I'm just as an outsider. How is the team doing cohesively? How are things looking as you move on? For the next chapter.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Stacy was a big part of the chamber, right? I mean, she served for 11 years, I believe, as the chamber president, and really shaped it to what it is today. But Carmen's terrific.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. Carmen's an excellent leader, and she has vision, and is really going to do great things for the chamber if she does end up accepting that role full time. But we have a young team, so it's super exciting at the chamber. That's so really exciting.
It is exciting.
It's super exciting.
I mean, when I just pulled up chamber staff, I mean, you guys are all pretty young.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Which is exciting because what it's given us is a lot of energy and a lot of passion for our work and a lot of time too. We're young, so we have disposable time.
Sure.
Right. Which is fun. And again, I full faith in Carmen's leadership ability, and where the chamber's headed, and just making sure that, our team, we're energetic and making sure that our energy is just spent on the right things, and she's good at doing that, and making sure that, that's being done. And I love everybody on the chamber staff. Being able to become part of that organization has been a great transition for myself. And then being able to be in a position where we have so much potential with the youth of the chamber. I mean, that's something I can't emphasize enough. It's just our young energy that we can bring as a team is terrific, and it allows us to tackle projects and program in a way that a lot of other chambers that are a little more tired can't do. And that was something that I loved coming into this community and working for a chamber of commerce. Is a lot of people don't know about their chamber.
Right.
A lot of people in other communities, their chambers are afterthoughts, right? The community I was coming from before, Manistee, they had a smaller chamber that didn't have as big as a footprint. So being able to come up here where the chamber has such a big footprint and is exciting and puts on some amazing programs and is committed to pursuing the business workforce and just economic success of Manistee County. It's just exciting to be a part of. And again, I think that transition has gone very well, and Carmen's definitely the right person to be leading right now in the chamber. So
good.
Yeah.
Good. Sounds like it's going to be an exciting future.
Oh, it's going to be very exciting. I mean, I'm excited for the next couple years here to be a part of a team like that and to be able to set direction, set new programs, right, and make sure that we're fulfilling our mission. And yeah, I'm definitely excited for it. And the next couple of years are going to be good. I can tell you that much.
So before we end it, and this isn't to single any business out or anything like that, but I want your honest opinion on your best place to get pizza and your best place for a burger.
Oh man,
they're all great.
Yeah, they're all great.
This is just Andrew's favorites.
Sure. I'm gonna have to go Golden Stag for pizza.
Dude.
You get their happy hour pizza. Oh, I mean, the golden, a good price point and really, really good pizza. I will admit, I haven't had too much pizza. When I get pizza, I'm normally a Little Caesars. Like, it's late night. I don't have time to cook. I'm just driving home past the Little Caesars. It's cheap. Just get a hot and ready. So I haven't had Big Al's or any of the staples. I've had Fricano's and some other places, but yeah, Golden Stags was one of my favorites that I've had up to this point. But again, that's a very small sample size.
It's good pizza.
Burger, I'm gonna have to go with North Channel. I love North Channel's burgers. They really do it well, the North Channel. So those are the two that come to mind. But obviously, that's also off a small sample size. And typically, when I go out to eat, I do things I can't make at home.
Sure. So
burgers are something I tend to avoid. So burgers for me, I've had, I think, 4 since I've been here, 2 of them being from North Channel. So that, again, very, very limited sample size. But
from a personal level, how's your integration into the community? Making friends, meeting
Sure,
people,
yeah.
You're hanging out with different people, or is it just work right now?
For me, I've been really busy because I'm still doing a master's program. So it is kind of like I work, I go home, write, and go to the gym. But so it's been great though. I have really appreciated a lot of the networks I've been plugged into. Even with the chamber staff, because we're young, that kind of makes it fun too.
Sure.
We all get along, and those are people that I can rely on, and kind of just feel like I have people who are, my friends within the community already. And I've been really blown away actually with the youth of the community. I know on paper that's not the case with the demographic breakdowns, but I've interacted with a lot of young people who've moved up to Manistee, and that's also very encouraging.
Mm-hmm.
But the integration has been great. It's just being intentional with who you're plugging in with. I mean, even running on the pier, that was a great event where, there's a sense of community in that, right? So Manistee Run Club, things like that. Those are ways to get plugged in. Obviously, my time's fairly limited right now with, I am struggling to be able to attend certain meetings with groups I want to get plugged into, but I know after December I'll have much more free time to actually be intentional at getting out. But it's been going well so far.
So this will be your first sleigh bell.
Oh, let me tell you, I'm very excited about this first. People have been really, they've been talking it up a lot. So I'm really excited just based off the pictures and how many people come into town for that. Sounds like there's a lot of energy.
To me, it is the energy. It's the amount of people. It's an insane amount of people for 20 minutes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because the parade's really not that long. But 6 people deep from the curb to buildings, from the front end of River Street all the way down to the Elks is crazy. Like, where do they come from?
Yeah.
But I know in my years being here, meeting people, that the only time they come to Manistee is for sleigh bell, which is mind-blowing.
Yeah.
It's really magical. It really is.
Yeah.
There's no other word for it. You're gonna dig it.
Yeah, I'm trying to get a group of people up here. Like, you guys don't understand how big of a deal this is. Like, please come up that weekend. This is gonna be gonna be big.
It's just the city's just lifted for about 8 hours that day. There's all kinds of shit going on the week of, but like that day, there's just people everywhere, kind of milling around, and like the horse and carriage and multiple Santa Clauses. But it's really something to see.
Yeah.
And this will be the first time in like 6 years I'll be able to enjoy it with my family. So
that's exciting.
I'm down for it.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to it.
Andrew, dude, this was great, man.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
No, thank you for your time. I appreciate you having me on.
This is awesome.
Yeah.